And since then, I've never seen anyone that's fallen closer to what I think than him. But I do think that in today's society, endorsing a political affiliation is so detrimental to your reputation. And that's for both sides. It's so detrimental to your reputation as a leader, as pastors, preachers, whoever you are. To endorse one political affiliation in this world today is so detrimental. And I have a hard time with, understanding why people, I get it. I know that sometimes it's influenced by money. I get it. Sometimes it's in politics is also heavily it deals heavily with people's emotions. And when you could touch someone's emotions, you could touch someone and tell someone, oh yeah, well, guess what, people are going to do these, if you can deal with someone's emotions, they more so tend to side with you and say, okay, well, what's the big deal? And they'll take that money and they'll endorse you with no problem, because you've catered to their emotions, and you've catered to their flesh in a sense. And so I get it. Like, I get it sometimes. Like, people are thinking to themselves, like, what's the big deal? Like, what's the big deal if I endorse this person? He may not believe everything that I believe in, but he's more closer to the things that I believe in, and I don't understand the big deal. But in today's society and the way the media has presented things, it is a big deal because it's divisive. And for both sides, if you're watching this video, my personal stance are both sides, the way the media
Hmm.
has portrayed things, it does not matter. Both sides are divisive. You can't just say one or the other. Both sides are, because of the way things are
Right.
handled within our media and the way things go down in the way the news is today. And so that's sort of like my personal thoughts on it. I have angles for every side, but if we were being honest, in today's society, for the two main political parties that we have today, pastors endorsing political affiliations, one side or the other,
Hmm.
is a huge detriment. And I just have a hard time in understanding, like, why people would rather, because in today's society, it's politics or just straight truth. Like, I think if Jesus were here today, I think if Jesus were here today, and we had our, with the Republican and the Democratic Party, if Jesus were here today, I don't think he would choose sides. If I'm being completely honest, I do not think that Jesus would choose Republican over Democrat or vice versa. And I think all of us should ask ourselves that question, that very question, because some of you all go super hard in the paint for these politicians when they're flawed people who are living what I think is two-faced lies. There's a lot of politicians out here that don't even care. I actually have personal friends that are one party just because of the money. They do not believe in one thing that these people say. Maybe a few things, but not everything. You know what I mean? And so it's like these
Hmm.
people are two-faced lies. They don't care. And here you are vouching, and it's gonna be so crazy. I'm not trying to say this or anything. I don't know if this is gonna be true or not. I'm praying for the man Trump. But there are gonna be so many spiritual leaders that when Trump falls after this election, after this time and being in the office, and Trump goes about his business, if Trump falls spiritually, let's just say he has a falling out with God or something like that. I don't know. There are going to be so many Christians out here that say, well, he this, that, and the other. Then there's going to be another handful of Christians that say, I told you so. I told you he wasn't a good. That's divisive. That's
Hmm.
divisive. But ask yourself this before I hand it over to you, Truther. I want everyone that's listening to ask yourself this. If Jesus walked the earth right now, there's no way that he would stand for either political party. There's no way that he would choose a side for either one of these political parties. And my personal thoughts is I don't think that we should be going as hard as we are for one political party, especially when we know that it's not everything that we believe in. It's like choosing the lesser of two
Hmm.
evils. And so, Truther, what are your thoughts? Do you believe pastors should endorse political parties?
I don't believe pastors should endorse any man outside of Jesus to their congregation and to people, because I think that's a position of influence, and it's often a position of influence, but not nearly enough a position of responsibility. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people take responsibility for like the things that they say from the pulpit, especially that. Now, here's the thing. I don't tell a lot of people this, but in 2016, the week before the election, or a few days before the election, sorry, I felt, and I don't, it wasn't like a prophetic word or anything, but I felt in my heart, and I don't know if it was God or whatever, but I had been thinking about it and praying about it, but like I felt God confirming to me that Trump was going to win. I just felt the confirmation in it. Now everything around me and everybody in the outward, the debates and all that, were saying, well, Hillary Clinton is destroying him, and like he's not even talking about anything substantive. He's just taking insults and calling people nasty and saying stuff. He's not going to win. I felt that God had confirmed within me that he was going to win. Now I didn't vote at all in 2016. I just wasn't interested in the process or anything. But I remember feeling that, and I was like, man, I think. And then I was like, yeah, I think that was confirmation that he would. I didn't tell a single person. I didn't say a word because I didn't think it was necessary. Why? Because I don't think it really mattered that much for the sake of the church. It mattered in some other personal areas, maybe to some people, but for the church, I don't think it really mattered. Why a lot of people are endorsing maybe not candidates but parties, I think in the church, is because they truly do believe that the Republican Party is not against the church, and I think that's why. That's the only logical reason I can come to, and just from listening to people talk, because they're not against it. I've heard people talk about conservatives and Republicans, and they say, because they're not against the church, they're going to allow the church to continue to flourish and to have, do what the church does. Because they have enough reverence of God to do that, they're worth keeping in, even though there may be some toxic stuff in there. There may be some things that you don't disagree with. There may be a Trump that comes in. There may be some racists that come in. It's worth it because it doesn't affect the church, and the church can continue to work. My greatest fear with that mentality was just allowing anybody to come in there who wasn't necessarily qualified or didn't have the character for it, is how bad that represents the church. Because and like I said before, people won't know the difference. If I endorse a political candidate like Trump to my congregation, if they do not agree with that, they're going to look at the character of Trump. They're going to look at how he presents himself, and they're going to say, well, you support his character, you support his behavior, you support his reckless abandon. And
Exactly.
because you support those things, how do I know that you're really hearing from God? Because why would God want somebody like this? And I'm going to say
Exactly.
something. It's not even really controversial like that, but it may be to some. God would allow a person like Trump to come in. He would allow it because he won the electoral vote, and he did what was needed to be done. The people chose him, and I don't know. And God allows the people of power to be in those positions. So ultimately, even if the people desired, God still has to allow for it to happen. And God allowed for Trump to get in for a reason. Just like I believe at this point, it seems like he's allowing Biden to get in. God is allowing it all, but the people have to be responsible with what is given to them. And that, a lot of people were saying, through this presidency, Trump was going to find God. People were talking about that. And maybe he did find a better relationship with it, but it didn't show outwardly. It didn't show at all outwardly, if that were the case. If that were the case, then the fruit wasn't there. And most people can confirm that, whether you're the biggest Trump supporter or you're just one that supports the party. So my biggest thing is, if I'm gonna put myself in the shoes of someone. Let's say that I supported Biden. Man, you know how divisive that would be to go in the church, whether it's even in the black church, like, which is mostly, people vote Democrat, even in the black church. I just think that that would be the most problematic thing, to outwardly express that to people, because I don't agree with everything that the Democratic Party does. But a lot of black people are conservative in their lifestyle and how they view things, but they vote Democrat because there's been for so long a perception that Republicans are racist, which I don't believe is just surface level true. But I will say that they are apathetic when it comes to social justice. They are just not. They drop the ball. They do not put nearly. If they spoke even just a little bit about systematic racism and racial injustice, not just when George Floyd dies, and then they backpedal once more information comes out and they start to question stuff. But if more people from that area spoke out against social injustice, they would quadruple in the number of African Americans that vote conservative, because that's the one missing element for a lot of Christians in the church when it comes to them, because the Democratic Party began talking about social issues. They used to be the party that was considered racist. They were considered the racists, but when they started getting into social justice and all of that, the perception of them changed. But black people by and large are conservative. And if I were to come to a full church, a black congregation and say Donald Trump is the person you should vote for, that's not gonna. People want to not come to that church. People are going to have huge issues with that. Why? Because of the black community's perception of President Trump. Their perception is he's a racist, and perception is a reality for many people, and that is the case in the church. So I wouldn't. Long story short, I wouldn't encourage any pastor to endorse. Now, if God gives you a prophetic word about who will be president, and you feel that it is of necessity for the church to receive that word, then I'm not going to be the one to say don't. I still don't say endorse. I would say share what you feel God put on your heart, but with caution, understanding, like, this is what I feel God has revealed to me in prayer, or this is what I got. I feel God gave me this word of prophecy. I'm going to share it with you all. This is by no means about my political affiliation or opinion, but this is what God told me. If God told you something, because I don't, but and there's things that God tells me that I never vocalize because I don't think it matters to the church, or is in the grand scheme of things for the church. Sometimes it's for my personal household. Sometimes it's for my family. So that's where I stand with supporting from the pulpit candidates. I think principles can be preached from the pulpit, like, emphasizing the importance of life and valuing life, and if you want to preach about queerness and same-sex marriage from the pulpit, you be my guest. I mean, I'm preaching against all sin and all of this and that, but like, if you want to make that the hill that you're going to die on, preaching down against, you know, people from those communities, I mean, go ahead. You can preach the importance of being right with God and all of that. But if you want to harp on any specific sin, let God lead you is what I would say in that case. But I would preach on values. I would preach on the Bible, not so much supporting political candidates from the pulpit.